Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Duke Football Coverage Podcast, brought to you as always by Bull City Coordinators. You can follow us on Twitter at DukeFB Coverage. Our direct messages are open. You can send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com, and you can follow us at our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. On to our next guest, who had a tremendous career at Duke. He played running back and wide receiver from 2009 to 2012. He amassed, I believe, a total of 2,373 yards from scrimmage, scored 10 touchdowns, returned 59 kicks for 1,242 yards, which was good for a 21.1 yard per return average. And as I noticed this morning, he is the first Duke player in history to total 1,000 plus yards rushing, receiving, and returning kicks. He wore number 33 and was a critical part of turning the Blue Devils from a perennial doormat to an ACC contender. Desmond Scott, how are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself, Ben?
I'm doing great. I'm glad we could connect and get this interview going. I always love talking to former Blue Devils, but I also wanted to talk to you because of what you're doing now. So if you could bring us up to speed on what you've done since you left Durham and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, well, so I am still in Durham. Durham is home to me. And I stuck around for college and stuck around after. I went into teaching to pursue becoming a principal. And then my classroom and my school changed into a gym. So now I train over 70 plus athletes, whether that be legitimate football, basketball, soccer, volleyball, or your generic everyday person who we call athletes as well. My facility is located in Durham off of 15501. We're 11,000 square foot facility, 24/7 general access, keyless entry. And the gym is great. Durham is great. The community is great. And I love helping my community get in shape.
Well, how did you end up falling into this line of work in particular? I'm curious what drove you to that.
Yeah, well, so I didn't want to do it. So I turned the NFL down. And I wanted to really be a principal. And I was in my teaching profession, and my dad, he said, hey, you need to go get certified. You know how to do it. You've been doing it your whole life. You prepared yourself for the NFL Pro Day. So you clearly know what to do. And I fought against him for a while. And it wasn't until someone outside of my immediate circle reached out and said, hey, look, I'm thinking about going to get certified. You want to do it too? I said, let's go do it. And so we got certified together. And I quickly understood that the profession of health and fitness would be able to provide for me and my family way more than being in a classroom teaching and being a principal would be.
Well, I'm curious. I do have some more questions I want to ask you about being a personal trainer, but what was it that made you turn down the NFL and say, no, I want to do something else?
Well, for me, the NFL never was a dream. My upbringing was a blessed one. So I never had to look at this sport as a way out. It was fun for me. I played because my brother got excited when he saw me play in the backyard with his friends. And that started my football journey. And for me, it was always to bring enjoyment to others and enjoyment to myself. The NFL was never a dream. So when I got to that point, for me, I wanted to be able to embark on a journey that will directly impact the kids of my community, to let them know that, hey, look, you can use this as a tool and an avenue to get to where you have to go, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all. And so for me, walking away from football knowing that I gave my all and understanding that the platform that the Lord gave me, we went into a different direction. And for me, that is teaching. I teach every single day.
Well, talk to me a little bit about, I guess, your biggest challenge as a personal trainer is it getting, aside from the business side of things, which I'd like to hear that as well, but as far as keeping people on track, keeping them motivated, what do you find the biggest challenge is?
Yeah, well, so Ben, our title is life trainer. So we're not a personal trainer. We call ourselves life trainers because we truly believe it is our responsibility, not our job, but our responsibility to impact those that we have the opportunity to come in contact with mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So notice I mentioned 3 things before we even talked about the gym. And I'm gonna get to your question, but we do our training in a manner where the physical part has no choice but to happen. But I want to impact those other 3 things first. So the challenges that I'm going to bring to you to make you go through, to make you have to think through, when you step foot, outside of the gym, you will say there's no problem greater than what Desmond has put me through in the gym. And that's my responsibility. I feel as though a lot of people do not get to face the challenges that a Division I football program will bring to you. And I think that has a lot of people at a disadvantage because the issues, the challenges that we have to work through as 18, 19, 20-year-old young men with juggling academics and juggling sports and juggling social media and juggling everything else that we have to juggle. Many people don't have to face that. And so it's my job, I believe, to introduce these kind of challenges, if you will, to those of my facility. So much so, the facility has embraced the idea of team culture, right? So we have player profile card. So, like back in the day, how you used to have a picture on the front, and then on the other side, you had information of that player. Well, we have that for our athletes, right? So we have their photos, we have their maxes of bench press and squat and deadlift. And so we're truly embracing the whole culture of team sports. And so to your question, the most difficult thing that I have to deal with as a trainer is, I would say, to get people to understand that they are better than what they believe. They can push themselves to limits that they've never been to. It's not going to kill them. There's a difference between injury and pain, and truly being able to understand those differences and understand those levels. But I have a lot of people who have bought into what we're doing, and they're hooked. They're hooked, and not hooked in a way where it's like a cult, but hooked in a way where I know that I can't get this anywhere else. I am a different person every time I walk out of the gym, so I stay, right? I tell people who come in for consultations or other trainers, 90% of my clients are better than every trainer in North Carolina. I'll say it again. 90% of my clients are better than every trainer in North Carolina. And I say that because the education that we give them, they can go do it on their own. They stay because of each other. They stay because of the new things that they learn on a day-to-day basis.
How did you get into the life training concept beyond just the, for a short term, easy to understand for everybody, physical fitness concept? How did you progress from just the physical side of things to more the life side of things that you've talked about?
Yeah, man, it was definitely a blessing because business was an accident for me. Coming out of college, the word entrepreneur was not one that got tossed around in my circle or any circles that I was aware of. And junior year, senior year is when not Facebook, what is it called? Instagram started to boom. And it wasn't until Instagram came around until we started hearing the word entrepreneurship. And so for me, when I was going to train, I was just training. I wasn't running a business. I was just training. And so I knew that I had to create an LLC. And so the LLC is called MDH Fitness, which stands for My Dose of Healthy Fitness. But before I truly embarked on the journey, I said, what is the number one diminishing thing in this world? And I gave myself two answers: family and health. So I knew that if I went on a journey to cultivate an environment that talked and dealt with family and health, I was doing what I was supposed to do as a Christian and godly man. Everything else took a life or took legs of its own and started to create itself from that foundation.
Let me switch gears kind of completely, but also stay on what we're talking about right now with your business. You mentioned that entrepreneurship wasn't discussed in your circles when you were growing up. And that seems pretty similar to the background that I had. There was a lot of, you go to school and you get a job somewhere and you depend on other people to be your employer, right? Mm-hmm. For your source of work, whatever it is. I'm curious, why do you think that is? What was it about your background that maybe didn't expose you to the idea of people going out and starting their own business and developing their own brand?
I just don't think people had access to that kind of information, right? If we hear people are products of their environment, and that is a true statement. And so if you aren't privy to how to double knot your shoe, you'll never double knot your shoe. And I think the concept is the same in terms of entrepreneurship. If you've never had a conversation, if you never was forced to think a thought that you've never thought before, you stay in your lane. Now, I think Generation Z is a little different, right? I think they are all about pushing the envelope and asking questions. But my generation, we heard what our parents said, and we rarely ask questions outside of it, because you and I both know that if we ask questions, there's probably repercussions to whatever questions we were asking, because 9 times out of 10, our parents would have possibly thought that we were questioning them rather than the concept of what they were presenting. And so I just think the environments that you're in, if it doesn't present certain opportunities, you can't be aware of it. So much so, my uncle owns one of the biggest lighting and stage companies in the country. My uncle, who was down the road. But it was never a thought of, hey, how'd you start working for yourself? It's not even a thought that comes into your mind.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. And I wonder, too, if there's just some inherent, the exposure concept, I think, is very important, right? Because if you're not around it, you're not going to think, okay, well, how am I going to do this? You may not even be able to dream something if you've never seen it before or fully visualize it. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's, to some extent, a risk aversion that comes up, right? And running your own business is a big risk. And you and I can talk about that in a little bit. And I was at a seminar for trial lawyers, and we were talking about going from being an associate to being a partner and running your own business. And I told him, I said, look, everything that we're talking to you about today is your risk profile, right? You've got to understand what your risk profile is when you make these decisions. And I'm curious kind of what your thoughts are on that, about how you determine whether you're risk adverse or whether you're somebody who's willing to say it may not work out, but I'm going to give it a try anyway.
Yeah, well, I was a 21-year-old naive Christian. That's what I was going to say originally, and I'll tell you why. But I was 21 years old, and my faith was one that pushed me forward. But I also did not know the risks that were involved outside of the day-to-day. Right. So I was 21. I just graduated and just bought a new car, and I was living in a townhouse. And so the risk for me was that every month we needed to have enough money to pay rent and to pay our car note. That's all that mattered. And so I was very naive in how I started business. And again, right, it was an accident. Business was not on purpose. I left teaching to start training. That's all that was to me. Training was training. Training wasn't business. Training wasn't an avenue to entrepreneurship. Training was just training. And again, I was 21 and I couldn't see past the day that I was on. As the business started to develop, then I started becoming more aware of what entrepreneurship was. This was in 2013. I didn't call myself a business owner until 2017. I didn't write a business plan until 2017, which I believe that has benefits to be in business before you actually write a plan on how to do business, because now you know what it looks like. But I was 21 and had no idea on how to move forward. My people grew me. And because I wanted to give my people great service consistently, that is how MDH Fitness became DBA Prime Athletic Training and Fitness Institute, because I wanted to be the best service provider I could be.
I'm just curious, you're in a life training, physical fitness, gym environment, right? Every day. And when COVID hit, that had to be very difficult for you guys.
For sure.
And I'm just curious if you could explain to us what that process was like, how that disrupted your day-to-day routine in your life.
Yeah, so I can't get into that unless I tap into the previous year of 2019. 2019 financially was the best year the gym had ever had, but it was the worst year for business. I had 15 staff. That was my first time ever having staff. Desmond Scott, the football player with all the intangibles, the work ethic, the push of a football player, the push of a team, tried to push my non-athletic employees in a direction. It was terrible. I hated being in my own business. So much so, I was going to start another one and let them have that one. Credit cards were used without my permission. Car had been broken into. Gym had been broken into. Car had been hit. So outside of the financial realm, everything else was falling apart. And it wasn't until the end of 2019 when I realized what the Lord was trying to get me to see, which was, you have made an idol out of all of these things: the money, vehicles, your body, other people's bodies. I can take all of these things away from you in an instant. And apparently I didn't hear the other warnings that he gave me throughout the year, because it all happened back to back to back to back to back. I could not breathe. As soon as I get my head above water, I'm getting pulled right back down. So to answer your question, when COVID came around, I said, oh, I've seen this before. Lord, I know what you're doing. Who? You have the will. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. But outside of the things that I can control, I will not try to control it. We lost 64% of business. 64%. There was times where our bank account literally saw 4 digits. 4 digits. As a business, 4 digits. Right? And prayer, my mom who runs our financial, and myself, we were just figuring out how to make things happen. From a day-to-day, month-to-month basis, it took me back to 2013, where the only thing that I was focused on was paying rent and paying my car note. All I knew is we had to get to the next day. We had to get to the next day. And being that we were a consistent service provider, our clients took care of us. There were some people who say, hey, leave my card on file. Don't worry about pausing it. We tried to provide services for people. I don't want it, but it's fine. Just keep my card on file. And it was those people who allowed us to stay open. So now we're really talking about community. Now we're really talking about team and what we represent as a company. We aren't just a gym where people come and feel like they're another number. We're a gym. We're an environment where people walk in the door and everybody knows your name. I don't care if you train. I don't care if you're there by yourself. Somebody's going to say your name. And that there is what we set out to build. That is how we overcame COVID. 2020 came and went. 2021 came and went. And now we're at a place where we're at business for 10 years now. And we just finished a huge renovation to put the gym where we are now. And where we are now is called Rugged Luxury. Rugged Luxury, where you walk in and it doesn't feel like a spa, but we have spa qualities. It feels like a gym, but we have spa qualities. So Rugged Luxury. Not only that, and you're the first person to hear this, so I don't know when this is coming out, but I think I'll beat you in real life. I built a tunnel in the gym to make it feel like people are going to play a sport. Right. So just like Duke has a tunnel to come out to the field, we have a tunnel too. We have lights, we have fog machine, we have music, we have the whole nine. We just put a 160-inch screen jumbotron in the gym. So now we're really encompassing team and Rugged Luxury.
Well, I will try to post this as soon as I can, but I think you are correct. You're probably going to beat me to this one because I've got to, after this interview's over, I'm going back to the office, and then I'm going to try to do better about sticking to my exercise routine. But during COVID, I started running again, and I've kept that. But I'm just curious, the hardest thing for me to do regularly is weightlifting. Mm-hmm. Which I try to do because of the health benefits of it, not really to, do anything other than that. But I'm just curious if you have any tips or advice or suggestions for anybody who may be listening about how to stick with and stay committed to an exercise routine.
Yeah, I would absolutely say don't outrun your headlights, right? Start small, right? Start small. And yeah, so don't outrun your headlights, meaning don't go as far as you can see, right?
I know exactly what you mean, man. I used to drive on a bunch of rural roads. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So don't outrun your headlights. Stay small. right? Oftentimes people set goals entirely too big, entirely too big, entirely too big. Just come to the gym. Come to the gym, understand what you're dealing with. People often run from the idea of being sore. Well, the extreme soreness comes when you come in and do too much. So if you just come in and do just enough, you'll still be sore, but not the sore where you having to grab the walls to sit down on the toilet, or, crawling up the steps, or you feel it when you're trying to roll over in the bed. So just start small. If you start small, then it's like a snowball effect. As it continues to go downhill, right, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you'll find yourself in a space where you've been going 21 days straight or a month straight, and now it's a part of your life, right? It is a habit, right? You want to be able to create a habit out of the gym. Understand that you get to go to the gym. You don't have to go to the gym. And if you can understand it from the standpoint of it's a privilege and not a chore, then that may help you change the thinking about the fitness.
Well, I think what you're saying is very interesting, and I'm going to try to phrase it another way and see what you think about it. Is routine is very, very important. And it seems like what you're saying is you've got to develop into a regular routine. And I think the concept of a routine can have negative consequences, but having watched my kids grow up, I've realized it's a lot more important than I realized when I was young. But is that something you try to stress to people? Like, you've got to get into a rhythm, you've got to have that routine, you got to have that pattern so you'll keep doing it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Because when you have habits, your motivation will fade. Period. I don't care how motivated you are or what avenue you're motivated in, that motivation will fade. But if you are a creature of habit and consistent habit, the habits, which is the routine that you're speaking about, will keep you going until that motivation returns again.
Well, let's switch gears from your current work to how we all got to know you, which was playing football for the Blue Devils. You mentioned you got into it when you were a kid, and I'm just curious, one, if you played other sports, and two, when you were playing football prior to going to Duke, what position or positions you played?
Yeah, so I was actually better in track than I was football. I, as a seventh grader, eighth grader, I was running 22 seconds in the 200, which is pretty
Fast.
good.
Yeah.
I was running 10.9s in the 100. I was running hurdles. So I was better in track than I was football. However, in the eighth grade, my dad asked me, where do you want to go to college playing? Do you want to go in track or do you want to play football? Obviously, as an eighth grader, with the fame of football, I chose football every single time. I'm going to play football. And so I was a smaller kid in middle school and high school, smaller frame kid. And so track wasn't a necessity for me in high school, because I was constantly trying to gain weight to be able to withstand the beating that you would take on the football field. And so in high school, I think I ran track maybe like 2 track meets. And that was just because at that particular time, I had reached the weight goal that my dad said I had to be for him to allow me to run track. So I think I might have ran 2 track meets. I really don't remember. But track was my thing. And in football, and how I was able to make the transition at Duke so easy from running back to receiver. My freshman year, I played at Southern High School. And this particular year, a kid named Antonio Fuller had transferred from Orange High to Southern Durham. He was a senior. He was fast. He was strong. And so our coach at the time was like, hey, look, you'll get snaps at running back, but you're an athlete and I need you on the field at all times. You're playing wide receiver. And so we used to run the wing T. We would run the wing T on goal line opportunities and or sometimes in midfield. And that's when I had the opportunity to play running back as a freshman. My sophomore year, Antonio was gone. And so I started at running back. We didn't like the direction of the program and the school in general. And so we wanted to make an IB change. So I left Southern to go to Hillside, which was the school that housed the International Baccalaureate program, which I was in middle school. And so I transferred back into it at Hillside. And then my junior year was a very similar situation to my freshman year. I had a guy there that had been playing running back for a while, Gary Douglas. So him and I took turns playing in the backfield, but I also played wide receiver. Gary Douglas left Hillside and went to Maryland. He played at Maryland after he left Hillside. And then my senior year, I was back at running back. So I had my fair share of snaps at wide receiver way before I went to Duke. So when Bryce went down, when one of our receivers got kicked off the team, I don't recall. That was an easy step up, very easy step up. Hey, look, I'll do it. We had a very capable stable of running backs, Jawan, Josh, Patrick. Like we were fine. I'll go play receiver. These boys can do it. And so that's what made the transition easy.
And let me ask you a little bit about that. It looked like from what I was able to pull up on your stats, you played running back your first 3 years, but obviously caught a lot of passes. Yeah. And then your senior year, you transitioned completely to wide receiver. Is that?
That is correct. Yep.
So you had a real good year in 2012. And I'm just curious, as did the whole team, what the receiver room itself was like. I mean, you had some good guys, Connor Vernon, Donovan Varner, Jamison Crowder was just getting going.
So Don was gone. So the receiver was Connor, myself, Jamison. So Jamison was there. So that my senior year, Jamison played.
Oh, so Varner left in 2011. That was his last year.
Yeah, Donovan was gone. Donovan left with Austin Kelly and those guys. So the three was myself, Jamison, and Connor. I'm trying to think of anybody else.
Yeah, I think Blakeney was a tight end when he came in. He hadn't transitioned to wide receiver yet. And then you had the Swiss Army knife of Brandon Kennett there. But what were you guys like as a unit? I mean, how did y'all get together? What was the locker room like?
I mean, honestly, for me, and one of the things that I regret is a big word. That is a big word. But one of the things I think I would have wished I took advantage of was truly experiencing the locker room environment with everyone. I wasn't a partier. I wasn't one who was up to doing new things. That just wasn't me. I stayed in Durham and I didn't go to Rutgers because of the friends that I made in middle school and high school that were local. So for me, it was nothing for Corey Gaddis and Jamison to get in a car with me to go to Greensboro to hang out with people that I graduated with from high school or to go to NC State. Spring practice, we didn't have practice on Mondays in the spring. And so I would go to NC State just to do homework on campus, just to break the monotony of being at Duke. It was a lot. It was a lot. And to get away from the walls of Duke University was great. But Jameson and I, we became very close. Jameson and I became very close. We were roommates on the road. So he was always the guy where we were watching movies together. One of our favorite movies to watch was House Party. And for some reason, it came on every Friday night when we were on the road. And so we would watch it every Friday night, laugh at the same things, tell the same jokes. And so Jameson is my guy. We talk often. I train his wife, and they are actually expecting their third child right now. But out of that core receiving group and the team in general, Jameson is one of my closest guys that I still communicate with.
Well, congratulations to him on kid number 3. That's exciting. And he's still doing real well. I'm just curious, and looking back at some of the guys that you played with, and I'm going to ask you about being a kick returner here in a little bit, but you had guys who would do whatever it took to win a game on the field. You know, Kennett was quarterback. He was wide receiver. He was a tight end.
Yeah.
You were running back. You were wide receiver. You were returning kicks. Connor Vernon did some punt returns too.
Yep.
Where was that something that the coaching staff looked for in recruits? Is it something they developed while you were there? How did you guys end up with such a collection of players with that mindset?
We all came from winning environments. And we did the roles that the coaches asked of us in college. We did it in high school. So it wasn't anything that was new to us or foreign to us. We had been doing it already. We were the guys that played both offense and defense and special teams in high school. And so to come to college and be asked to only play one position, you know, that's a little weird for us. You know, we've done it all before. We don't think it's too much of an ask to do it now. And so when our number was called, you know, we just did it. The team that Coach Cut helped develop was about faith, family, and fitness. Excuse me, that's mine. Faith, family, and football. Faith, family, and football. And so we did everything from a faith base for our family and for football. And sometimes it was being a kick returner and having to average 21 yards on a kick return and then stay on the field to go do running back and then move out to slot and then play receiver. We did whatever we had to do to create a legacy for the program.
Well, you brought it up and I wanted to ask you about it. Talk to us about what it's like being a kick returner. And I know the rules have changed because they want to take the injury out of the game, which makes sense. But walk us through what that's like when you're trying to catch the ball, see a lane, and make a decision about where to run and what to do.
Well, kick return is way easier than punt return. I'm gonna put that out there now, right? You have way more space between where the ball is and where the defender is in kick return. Much safer, in my opinion, than punt return. Okay. Now the difference is guys are definitely running full speed for kick return, but it's nothing like kick return, right? At the beginning of the game, if you guys are getting the ball first, you're the first person to touch it. So you're setting the tone for your team. You literally have the ability to impact the first possession that your team will have. And to have that kind of control, it brings a rush. The the ability to have the full field. I can literally pick and choose from sideline to sideline where I want to go. With receiver and running back, you don't have that opportunity. And so there's a freeness that you have with kickoff return that you don't get to have at any other time on the field.
How do you practice that during the week? That's something I'm always interested in learning about for the kicking teams, because I feel like in football, all the focus ends up too much, obviously, at the quarterback, but then also we look at the defense, and then it seems like we only pay attention to the kicking unit if something goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, so we used to practice all forms of kicking throughout the week. We had days that were specified for it. But for kick return, the main focus was lane assignments for the blockers, right? So being able to be on the front line, knowing how to read the kicker, right? Making sure that you had your foot on a particular line. So if they try to do an onside kick, you could react, not turning your head so fast, getting to your point on the field before you turn around to find your guy, knowing who your guy is, knowing that, hey, look, some of these kickoff teams, they like to run stunts. So knowing where your guy's going to end up, right? That was the biggest focus for the kick return guy, was knowing where your blockers were going to go, who had who. But then it's about just being an athlete. Go out there and make a play. Everything is not going to happen like you practice. Never does. So go out there and be an athlete. Know that this is kind of what's going to happen. But do what you're supposed to do out there in the field, and be the guy that they recruited.
Well, speaking of recruiting, how was it that you ended up at Duke?
Yeah, they didn't do a good job recruiting me. I'll say that. So Duke, I don't even think Duke gave me a football scholarship until my senior year. So my top 5 schools was Florida, Georgia, Clemson, West Virginia, and Rutgers. That was my top 5. Florida, they had a coach named Coach Drayton who left Florida. He was a running back coach. He left Florida and took a head coaching job somewhere. I don't recall where he went. Georgia, there was a guy who committed before me. I think it might have been 2 guys that committed before me. So that canceled out me going to Georgia, down there with Coach Ball, who is the running back coach down there. Clemson was too small of a town.
Clemson was
too small of a town.
Yeah, I grew up right outside of there. I know what you're talking about. It's not the same. It's not the same now, though. It's crazy.
No, it's insane now. But when I was being recruited down there, they had the one road with the paw prints.
Yep.
And I understood that Georgia was 2 hours this way and Charlotte was 2 hours that way, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me. I knew I wanted to be able to be the guy to go sit at the mall and just chill, get some ice cream.
There's no mall. There's no mall in Clemson.
Yeah. Clemson wasn't going to be able to provide that for me. So again, right, this speaks to what I said earlier, right? Football was a fun thing for me, right? I didn't have the business savvy of football at that time. I didn't have it. My dad didn't have it. For us, it was about, let's go to a program that is going to take care of you. You're going to win some games. You're going to get a great education, and you'll be a very good citizen after you graduate. West Virginia was great, man. If West Virginia could have landed, this is who they were recruiting at the time. Logan Thomas, who ended up going to Virginia Tech.
Pretty good.
He was being recruited at receiver. You had Taj Boyd.
Pretty good.
Was getting recruited. You was recruiting me. You had Slayton that was still at quarterback, and you had what is his name? Devon. He was from Miami. Number 7. Oh, what is his name? He was fast. Noel Devine. Do you remember that kid?
I'm trying to look him up. Oh, right. Yeah.
Electrifying.
Right.
So you had me, Logan Thomas, and Taj Boyd. We were the biggest recruits being recruited in that year. West Virginia didn't do a good job bringing us in at the same time. We never got there all at the same time to have conversations or anything like that. Taj committed to Clemson. Logan committed to Virginia Tech, and I committed to Rutgers. Rutgers was when Ray Rice was still there.
Wow.
So you got to think about it. Greg Schiano was running a daggone offense. He was running one with Ray Rice. And so I committed to Rutgers out of all the other schools. I loved Tennessee when I was being recruited. Coach Trooper, who is now at Duke, was the wide receivers coach at Tennessee when I was being recruited. He left Tennessee. The whole coaching staff of Tennessee came to Duke. Again, my parents used to talk about, hey, look, the friends that you make in high school, middle school will be the ones that you have forever. Those are the ones that I hung out with while I was in college. I was watching my best friend and her boyfriend, who were in the band in high school, practice this summer. And I was watching them say, hey, look, I cannot leave them. I can't go to Piscataway, New Jersey and not see my friends. And so immediately I called my dad. I said, hey, look, I'm going to decommit from Rutgers. I want to commit to Duke and what's his name? What's the coach? Not Coach Cut.
Coach Roof.
No, he was gone. It was who was the recruiting coordinator for my area? He went to go take a job at ECU. What is his name?
Was it Scotty Montgomery?
Scotty. So Scotty recruited me when he came back to Duke. Scotty recruited me. Scotty was at Hillside all the time because he was recruiting Corey Gaddis. So I decommitted from Rutgers, committed to Duke and Coach Cut and Scotty Montgomery on the spot. The news crew came to me where I was watching the band, and we did an interview right then on the spot. And so that's how I ended up at Duke.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but when you mentioned Noel Devine, I pulled up his stats. He had 1,289 yards in 2008, 1,465 yards in 2009. I mean, he was a machine. He returned kicks too. Yeah. He was catching 20 to 30 passes a season. I mean, yeah, 29 rushing touchdowns in his career, 2 more receiving.
Monster.
Yeah.
Monster.
That could have been something if you guys had been at West Virginia.
It would have been insane.
Yeah.
Because I think Slayton, I think he might have graduated or left before Noel did. And so that means Taj would have got reps immediately. I would have got reps immediately. It would have allowed him, Noel Devine, to slow down some, but they were running a very powerful offense. This is when I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, the triple option came in. Because I think Slayton was running, or the read option. The read option. I'm pretty sure they started running the read option.
Yeah, because you had Rich Rodriguez was there for the first couple of seasons, and then he went to Michigan and was replaced by Bill Stewart, followed up by Dana Holgerson, who I'm probably mispronouncing his name. But I mean, there was a lot of talent there, and Rodriguez ran a very creative offense. He'd done very well when he was at Clemson and got those guys, going.
Yeah.
Man, that could have been that's a what if right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're glad you came to Duke. And one of the things that I want to talk to you about is you come in 2009, you're this close to a bowl game. You're playing with guys like Thad Lewis, and Roof's class is going out. His kind of last group of guys is going out. So that senior leadership is gone. And then 2010 through 2011, you're losing more than you're winning, but you're losing a lot of close games.
Yeah.
With the exception of Alabama, which we won't talk about.
Man. Well, positive stat. Positive stat in that game.
All right.
We were the first team to rush for 100 yards against them for a long time. Myself and Josh Sneed had a very good game versus Alabama.
All right.
Got blown out, got smacked. However, that is a stat that him and I have together.
Well, that's great. And that is a good way to remember that game. That's how I'll think about it. But you go through these seasons where you're close. You've had some injuries on the roster, but you're close. And then 2012 happens. What was that season like?
2012 was outstanding. It was outstanding. We fought great games. We played great games. It wasn't a walk in the park by no stretch of the imagination. The camaraderie amongst the team, the reason why Coach Cut recruited the guys that he recruited, because we were his first recruiting class. And so what they wanted was coming into fruition. His first class were now seniors, and we were doing what they wanted us to do, which was win games and go to a bowl game. And so I think his timeline was absolutely perfect in how he cultivated an environment. Right. So this is my teaching and principle background. You can't come into a place and expect change immediately. It's not going to happen. And if it does, it's very rare. So you have to come in and you have to teach these teachers what you want. You have to teach the students on how to walk in the hallway properly. You have to teach everybody how to hold themselves to a higher standard. Well, that kind of started with us. And it was our responsibility to teach the guys under us how to walk the hallways correctly. And so that's what it was for us.
Now, getting to the bowl game and beating Carolina, what did those two things mean to you all?
Yeah, there's a video that goes around of me ringing the bell. I was the first one to get there, and I'm just spinning it. It was huge for me because Carolina was a school that recruited me. Being from Durham, knowing that Greg Little, who was a teammate of mine, went to Carolina, and me choosing to go a different direction was big from a Carolina standpoint. The rivalry within itself speaks for itself, right? That was our first time beating Carolina in a long time. And to do it on our senior year was fantastic. Now, to go to a bowl game, none of us knew what to expect. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know about the gifts and the experiences and everything that the bowl game had to offer. Like missing Christmas with our family was well worth it. Well worth it. We spent Christmas together as a team. We had dinner at a hotel. And it was an experience that we'll definitely remember forever.
Well, walk us through the end of the Carolina game. I mean, you guys kind of had them beat. Then there was, I think, that onside kick, if I remember correctly, and the floodgates kind of open. The ball bounces Carolina's way a couple of times, and Renfree and you guys just kind of calm down and say, all right, we're going to go down the field. And there you are, fourth down. What was that whole sequence in that game like?
It was insane. So it was a place that I've been before. So if you jump back to my sophomore year, so 2010, when I scored a dive winning touchdown versus UVA, it was very similar to that Carolina game. I was just in a different position. And honestly, I thought the winning touchdown was coming my way. I didn't get a pass the whole drive. It was Connor. I think Connor might have gotten all of them, honestly. I think Connor may have received every single catch on that drive. Jameson might have had a few. But if you look at a particular angle on that touchdown, Jameson comes out of nowhere. I definitely thought the ball was coming to me. I thought the ball was coming to me. And Jameson comes out of nowhere, gets hit, holds onto the ball, gets up. I'm the first one to him, and we are ecstatic. I think we still had to kick the ball back off, though, and so defense had to go back on the field. Matter of fact, I know that was the case. Defense had to go back on the field and get a stop before the game was over.
Yeah, they did. And I was pulling up, I think they went 2 plays, 13 yards and fumble. I pulled up the box score. Okay. And here's what happened on that drive. Complete to Blakeney, incomplete to Blakeney, complete to Connor Vernon for 29 yards.
On a third down, he ran across the field.
Right. And then complete to Jalea Duncan for 2 yards. Incomplete to Blakeney, then to Connor again for 15 on 3rd and 8. Blakeney gets a first down on 1st and 10. Sneed gets 1 yard running. Crowder gets a 3-yard catch. Jalea again on a pass on 3rd and 6 for a first down. Duncan runs again. You got 28 seconds left. And then incomplete. Excuse me. Duncan runs. Okay, no, I already said that. Incomplete to Duncan. Duncan runs for 2 yards, then to Crowder. And I should have listened to the Connor Vernon interview again right before this. I think he said Crowder was like the 3rd or 4th read on that play. It was just that the line held long enough and gave him plenty of time to find his guy. Is that what happened?
No, he definitely, because I was running around. My route was over. Like, I ran the route that I was supposed to run. And at this point, I'm just scrambling, trying to get away from the defender so that somebody could be hit. So I think the wide side of the field was our sideline. So Jameson and I both were on the right side. I think Connor was on the left side. Blakeney might have been on our side, but I don't recall. But I know I had to run like a little spot up route. And then I'm doing one of these, like I'm trying to, just be seen and get away. And Jameson runs across the front of the end zone and makes the catch. Like I'm in the middle somewhere, and Jameson makes the catch, gets hit, comes down, still holding the football, touchdown, and that's the game.
Well, that had to be a great moment, especially after everything you guys had been through and all the close games that you had lost to get a win and get a win against your rival. But what was it like as the team took the next couple of steps from 2013 to 2015? What was it like seeing those guys succeed?
Yeah, so I like I said, Jameson was one of my close friends. And so at that time, I was obviously doing business, right? I was working. But to come back and see these guys winning and winning big, right? They played Florida State in the ACC championship the next year. Was that the next year? Was that the following year?
Yes, sir.
Right? ACC championship. They played Florida State. I went to that game, and then they played Texas A&M. Went to that game. Was that this? Yeah, that was the same year. Should have beat them. But Johnny Manziel, they should have beat them because they had an outstanding first half. A very good first half. And whatever their coach said to them at halftime worked.
Well, I've watched that game a lot. And your former teammate, Carlos Ray, we did a big discussion about the bowl game. And he said, when you go back and watch that, pay attention to the A&M O-line. And I did. And one thing I noticed was, to your point about what they said during the second half, I think the head coach said, just take what's available. Stop trying to get a touchdown on every play. Because I think I've watched that game probably 3 or 4 times now. There was a lot that was open that Manziel was just gunning it deep, trying to make a big play on every down. And, it's hard to put up 38 points in 2 halves, right? I mean, to do it in the first half and then come out and do it again in the second half. So I think, that one was just an unfortunate set of circumstances, but it was still, it was a great season all the way around. Just tremendous.
Yeah.
And then even 2014, they didn't go as far, but it was still a great season. In 2015, they finally get the bowl win. Great season all the way around.
Yeah.
Did you feel like those seasons were vindication of kind of what you had come to Duke for to set in place?
I would be lying if I said yes. Again, right? You're talking to a guy, and this is probably not politically correct in my answer, but you're talking to a guy who played football for fun. Like I really did. I played football for fun. It was enjoyment for me. The business side of it, I didn't come to understand it until I was gone. And so for those guys that were my personal teammates, man, yes, I'm so happy for you guys. But once the guys that I played with are gone, I lost a connection with Duke. And this may open up some can of worms, but my time at Duke was great. I would not change it at all. But it was not the experience that I thought that I should have gotten as an athlete. And then again, we're talking about the business side of it. It was nothing to see my high school coaches at any given restaurant throughout the week and be able to spark a conversation. There was a disconnect between me and my coaches coming through Duke my 4 years. There was a disconnect. And again, it may have been the business side of it that I didn't understand, but there was no reason why I should be able to walk past the coach and not have a conversation or not spark some kind of, hey, how you doing? How's school? How's class? Da, 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 da. I didn't have that. And so now the coaching staff that is there now, with Coach Trooper and everyone else, I've been able to come back and meet these guys and feel a connection with them that I didn't have with my coaching staff. And so to your point, winning now, let's go Duke. I'm a part of that. I'm a part of that growth that is taking place now, even though it doesn't have anything to do with the coaching staff that recruited me. It feels like home now. Like I am wanting to buy season tickets. I am wanting to buy boxes to be able to take clients there. Like Now I want to be a part of that Duke community.
What do you think that was, the reason for the disconnect?
I don't know. I don't know if it was old school coaching, right? Where you stay in a player's place and I stay in a coach's place type of deal. Or I don't know if it was a you do what I need you to do, and that's all I need you to do type deal. Or if it was truly they didn't know how to have a relationship with me. And I'll speak to the last part. My dad is who my dad is, Tony Scott. If you're from Durham, you know who Tony Scott is. And he's a man's man. He's a man's man. And that's how he raised me to be. And so when my freshman year came, and this to speak to the kind of guy my father is, when coach started getting recruited by Tennessee again to come back, he called him. And he told him, hey, look, you sat in my living room and told me and my family, this is what you were going to do. You need to be a man of your word. And so I don't know if that hurt me or not, throughout my 4 years at the program, but I can't say it helped. I think me being the athlete that I was my saving grace, right? I had to play, right? There was no way that I couldn't be on the field, but there was a huge disconnect between me and my coaches. They may not have felt that way, but I did. I didn't feel like I could be the person and the athlete that I was genuinely. But to the point now, the coaching staff there, I knew that this coaching staff was the real deal when I saw a social media post. And this is going to speak to the career that I'm in currently. I saw the boys in the weight room, and every single person had weightlifting shoes on. Oh, I said, oh, this is a different coaching staff. I said, I don't know these guys yet, but whoever their strength and conditioning coach is legit. He's legit, because we had to lift in running shoes. You don't want to lift in running shoes for multiple reasons. If you have bad walking, running, jumping form, if you're trying to squat in these shoes, the bad running, jumping, walking form that you have, these shoes already have the molding of incorrect form. And so now you're trying to get me to squat heavy weight in the shoe that is already incorrect. It's not going to work. We are creating bad habits. If we're not fixing them, they're getting worse. We're never staying the same. So when I saw that post and these boys had on lifting shoes, I said, oh, it's game over. I knew what kind of coaching staff was at that program based upon the shoes that I saw the guys wearing in this Instagram post. And so when I got there, I talked to Heather, who is head of the NIL. She was like tutoring for us when I was there. She said when the head strength and conditioning coach got there, the first thing he told Pickle, everybody needs lifting shoes, and I need them now. I said, oh yeah, this is a different program. So it's no surprise that the guys did what they did this year. Not to me, because this is a different style of coaching.
All right. Well, that's great insight. And you're echoing exactly what everybody who's there that I've talked to has said about the strength and conditioning program. And I'm just curious, you talked about the culture change, and you talked about how these guys are the real deal and how invested you are in the program now. I'm just curious, looking back on your time at Duke, your 4 years there, what are you most proud of? Academic, athletic, on the field, off the field, what?
I would say got a lot of things that I'm proud of. One, something that I never knew until I graduated. So being from Durham, my dad used to walk around Duke often. And one of the wishes was, man, how cool would it be if I have a child and my child gets to come to this program? That was something I didn't know until after I graduated. So I was able to accomplish that for him. Number two, the rigor, the rigor of the academics is not to be belittled. It's difficult. And I double majored in minor. Difficult. Proud of that. Not using it, but I'm proud of it. And then three, this is from the football standpoint. I made ESPN top 10 and I had a billboard in Durham. I would say by far, those are my top three in no particular order.
Well, those are all great things, without question. Why don't you tell us where we can find you and keep up with you on social media or the internet? And then, then I'm going to give you an open mic because you were kind enough to spend time with me today answering my question. So I like to give all my guests an open mic. Yeah.
So you can find me on Instagram at Desmond L. Scott. That's DESMOND, the letter L, SCOTT. And our business page is Prime Institute. So you can find me on one of those platforms. And then on Facebook, Desmond L. Scott as well, and Prime Institute for the business page.
All right. I will make sure to link to those in the post at the website. But the floor is yours. You have an open mic. You can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Open mic. Let's talk about being a father and a husband right now. I think this is something that people need to hear more about. So we just had our first child.
Congratulations.
Thank you. December the 23rd. His name is Harrison Lennox Scott. And it is a joy. It is a on button that never gets turned off in terms of my role as husband and father. It has been a joy. There's nothing anybody can tell you to prepare for marriage and or being a father.
100% true.
You can't understand until you're in it. And so when I have the opportunity to talk to some of my guys and girls that are young at the gym about this journey that I've been on, I say, hey, look, most people, I say most people because some people do, most people do not apply for a job without knowing the job description. And I say that because the Bible specifically tells you your role as husband and your role as father. And if you don't understand what your role is, you need to go look at the job description. The job description will tell you how to live your life. And if you can do that, you'll have bumps and bruises along the way with anything, but you'll always know what your job description is and you can get back to it.
And you just have the one son, correct?
One son. Yep, that's correct.
All right. Now, if you guys have a daughter like we do, you will find that your job description will change.
It will change.
It will change.
Okay.
And it has been repeatedly stated to me by my daughter. She will tell me regularly, she's 9, happy wife, happy life, happy daughter, happy life. And then she has not really formulated this, but the ongoing message is, you are here to make me and mom happy, and you should always support both of us in whatever we want to do. And so you speak about knowing the job description. It will come to you in unique ways.
Okay.
You may not even anticipate it will happen, but it will be there. So you talked about earlier, maybe you weren't getting the message about where your career goals needed to be and everything.
Right.
I'll give you some advice. Okay. If you have more children and you have girls, keep your ears open to what their messaging is. Yes, exactly. Listen for the job description. Okay. It's there and they'll tell you.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a blast to have a daughter. My brother just had his first child, which is a girl, and it's different.
It is. And, one thing that I've found out is, and I've noticed this, being a trial lawyer, you pay attention to more kind of subtleties maybe than you would otherwise. And you're somebody who's got to motivate people, right? So you've got to pay attention. That same thing. You've got to find what makes them tick and what gets a reaction.
Right.
We have kind of gone out of our way as parents to not just do dad takes son, because we have a son too, we have an older son. Dad takes son because men are always with men and all that. Or daughter spends all her time with mom because they're both women, so they spend all their time together. I don't know if it was a conscious decision, but we've just kind of stayed away from that and made sure that both kids get time with both parents. Because I think what we found is that each kid needs something different from each parent.
For sure. Well, that is the reason why both parents are necessary.
Right. And I think it helps the kids. I think it makes them a little bit more confident. And I think it makes them a little bit more connected and just sure of themselves, because they're getting exposed maybe to different things than just doing one thing one way and that's their only exposure. I think it helps them. And so that's just something to pass on. Not that I would necessarily hold ourselves out as beacons of expertise on parenting, but our kids are still alive, and every day they're still alive. It's a success, right?
That's the goal right now, especially right now. My goal is to keep my wife alive. If I keep her alive, she can keep the baby alive, and I'll aid in there every now and then. But hey, if they can wake up with the breath of fresh air, I've done my job.
See, you understand that because you're a parent. Like non-parents will ask me, how are your kids doing? I was like, they're still breathing. I'm good. Because at your age, with your kids, with your son being, how old is your son?
He's like 6 weeks or so, something like that. He's young.
Okay. All right. So he's not at the point where he starts crawling around and sticking his hand on stuff and like your worry factor goes through the roof.
Right. No, not yet.
Because that's I remember when my son took his first step and I saw it, it was terrifying. Everybody says, oh, it's so amazing it's actually terrifying because you realize how much freedom they're about to have.
Right.
And they're not at an age where they can use it responsibly. So it's just the thing about parenting is it just really changes everything that you do.
Yeah.
Because it's not just you or your wife now. It's not the two of you, it's the three of you, and you're trying to get them ready for everything that they've got to get ready for. But that's a great message that you closed on. How long have you been married?
3 years in October.
Well, that's great. That's great.
So we're still young in it, but everything that I've done in my life has prepared me for this.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that I was most excited for, was to see all the direct and indirect lessons from my life start to overflow and come out of me as a husband and as a dad. Because you'll recall all the things that you've gone through, and I'm excited about the trajectory of where our marriage is going to be, and how we're going to do as parents.
Well, and one thing I'll pass on to you, this will be, if she doesn't kick me out before December, it'll be 20 years. One thing that I've really learned over time is that marriages evolve and they change.
Mm-hmm.
I think because it's a constant thing that requires a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I don't think that part necessarily gets discussed enough or prepared for. Like, I can talk about, and I'll go ahead and mention this now, my grandfather and grandmother were married for 72 years, and she passed away very peacefully last Thursday morning.
Okay. Sorry to hear that.
Oh, well, and thank you. And, it's kind of hard to really decide how much you grieve about it, because she was 93, 94. She was married 72 years. She got to see 3 great grandchildren,
Yeah.
she's seen lots of her grandkids and kids get married. And, but their marriage evolved over the course of my life, from when they retired, when they moved when they moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, out to West Ashley. And then these last 6 or so years where she was sick and had a lot of health problems, and grandpa's role evolved into really taking care of her and being exactly. And to watch that change and to watch his level of happiness really increase over these last 6 years. And even as they moved into retirement home, you're early on, you're starting out your life as a husband and a father. And one thing that I think you'll realize is, and this is way far afield of football, but is your marriage will evolve and change over time. And it's a great thing.
Yeah.
And you may not appreciate it till you're further back, you're way down the line on it. You may not appreciate it, but seeing this evolve with my grandparents has really been, an amazing thing to see unfold.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about, you talk about, examples, right? They were an example for you. My wife and I both have parents who've been married 32, I think, years or so. Right. And so been able to come from these households, take what we want to take, leave what we want to leave, and then merge them. We definitely have a foot up on a lot of people, which is a blessing. But we have examples that you just spoke to. And my wife and I, we have very open conversations about what we're dealing with and what we're going through, and future conversations or future issues rather. So having conversations now about things that will happen in the future, but having that example is very important. It is very important. And it goes back to what we were talking about. If nobody's talking about it, how will you even know?
Exactly. And it's really, and you're familiar with this in your line of work and your athletic career. It's a process, right? It's a process, and you get out of it what you put into it. And it's getting older now and watching what I kind of joke with my paralegal who's young. I said, look, you're in your 20s. When you hit my age, you start seeing a lot of people get divorced, or their parents pass away, or they start, passing away suddenly. And not to be a downer to bring that up, but you need to find ways to be in that moment, right? That you can enjoy what you're going through, and really appreciate it as it occurs, but also understand, everything evolves, everything changes. And I think the more that you're in the moment and the more that you're committed to working to it, the more you can get out of it.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Well, I think you've got a great future ahead of you as a father, as a husband, as an entrepreneur. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how that evolves. And if you have a daughter, just keep those ears open. All right.
Will do.
That's going to change things a lot. Well, Desmond Scott, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. I think we steered it back to what you do for a living, where you try to improve people's lives for them. And so we had a lot of discussion about about life issues and what matters in life. And that was a lot of fun to have that conversation with you. I personally learned a lot. I hope everybody else who listened does as well. And stay tuned, guys. We've got one more interview locked in. I've got to get back on the phone and send some emails and lock a few other folks down. We will continue to post them as long as I have the time to keep doing this. Follow us at bullcitycoordinators.com, on Twitter at DukeFB Coverage. Our DMs are open. And as always, go Duke.
Go Duke.